What is going on, everybody? Hope everyone's having a great day or a great week throughout this so far. It's always fun to get back into these kind of more casual but just kind of conversational live streams than what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks. I always try to find a way to balance out when we're doing interviews and conversations with filmmakers or photographers, and then just really running the conversations with all of you. So hopefully, with some of the stuff that I've got set up today, as the title says, we're going to be talking about the firmware updates that have come out over the last month. And kind of answer some questions about it, go through what everyone should be expecting to see in those firmware updates. And this isn't just limited to the S series and G series, though we don't really do that many firmware updates on point and shoot cameras. I know a lot of people do ask us those questions. But hopefully we can answer some questions that y'all might have. I pretty much, we're going to be talking a lot about Blackmagic RAW and the fact that that's now added to the S1, S5, and the S1H when you're using a video assist recorder like I have attached to my gimbal here. We had the firmware update that added support for the DJI Active Track system, so that's the motion tracking system. So I have my S1H actually here plugged in with my Ronin RSC2, so we'll talk about that a little bit too and answer some questions. If you've noticed, I dropped a poll in the chat. It's something that I'm going to try to do each stream now, because I'm always curious to see what, the kind of spread is of the people that are tuning in, all of you. Are you using G series or S series, or are you point and shoot users? It helps me kind of navigate and make sure that I'm producing and providing you guys enough content that is relevant for all of you. And that's actually going to be one of the main points of what we're going to be covering next month. So through the month of August, basically each week we're going to segment out and talk about G series, point and shoot series, the S series, and try to have a little bit more of a, focused conversation on those series of cameras. So if you're someone, I see in here, we've got some people with FZ80. We have a big mix of G series cameras and S series cameras throughout the time that you've been using them. I want to make sure that there's an opportunity for you to ask questions about any camera. Usually we always tend to talk a lot about new or current cameras, and we do get a lot of people that have questions come in through the chat about cameras like the G95 or a GX85 or even the GX9. I just want to make sure that we're giving everyone an opportunity to actually hear about your cameras, what's relevant for all of you. So with that, the poll is going to stay active through the entire stream. So if you haven't dropped your answer into the chat or into the poll, that would be awesome. Again, no requirement, nothing like that. It's kind of just an off-the-cuff thing, because I totally forgot that I can actually just push a poll through the chat and have it actually do this instead of just having to read through the chat later on and count up numbers. So yes, if this is your first time joining Lumix Live, these are our weekly broadcasts where we have conversations, like I said in the beginning, with typically filmmakers, photographers, industry members, to get a peek into how the creative process is, the technological choices that are made by some users, and even talking with industry people from Panasonic to, give you a peek about development and products and the thought process behind why something is created the way it is. But we also do all these conversations direct with all of you. Like I said, if this is your first time in the chat, welcome. I'm really excited to see you here and read that you're here, and have you join in on the conversation. As you can see, this is a really active community, and one of the cool things is just the support that all of you give each other when someone's got a question, and if I can't get to it on the stream, or it's something that I can't answer on the stream, y'all are so good at just helping each other out in the chat, so that's really cool to see. But a couple things that I like to get out of the way before we actually dive into talking about the firmware and addressing questions that you have is to remind everybody about the LUMIX Pro Services platform that we have. This is basically a support program that's built for varying different levels of users out in the market. So if you're someone who just likes to have some basic peace of mind on your equipment in the off chance that you might have to send a camera in for service because of a drop or manufacturer defect or anything like that. You can take a look at the red tier for the Lumix Pro service by using the QR code if you're in the United States. The red tier is a free level to get in. This gives you the 3-year manufacturer's warranty, so this lets you get that registered set up and you're all good. This also gets you, online tracking and all of the stuff that you'd kind of expect if you needed to ever use a service program. Then we have the Platinum series. So the Platinum membership is a bit higher level. This is a paid level service. So this particular program gives you things like a dedicated hotline into Panasonic for support. If you're having an issue, on set somewhere, or you're out in the field, it gives you a member's hotline that you can call in and actually speak to someone with our team dedicated to Lumix to actually kind of help you through this. You also get a bit more added benefits by joining into the Platinum series. So you get free equipment servicing for sensor cleanings, lens calibrations, and firmware updates. You get that throughout the year. You get a couple times throughout the year you can do that. You get 20% off out of warranty repairs. You also get that 3-year manufacturer warranty, as well as 2-day repairs with free next-day shipping on both ways. And you get a really cool strap that comes as a welcome gift for everyone to kind of just use not the basic included strap that comes with most cameras. It is a collaboration strap with Peak Design, so if you've got Peak Design equipment, you know how good their stuff is, and it's a really nice kind of added benefit with the kit. Now, for those that are joining us from not in the United States, I'm actually prepared this time. Our Lumix Pro service is also available in a number of other countries as well. If you take a look at lumixpro.panasonic.com, you'll be able to actually go take a look, see which region has the Lumix Pro services available for you, and see what the requirements are for that region to get into the different programs. Each country typically has some slight different requirements in equipment and stuff like that, so it lets you kind of just really find out which level you want to be on. All right. So I think that kind of covers my whole the Lumix Pro services spiel. And I'll throw the QR codes again at the end of the stream, as well as the link again for the global program. One of the things to mention out, as a lot of people have been doing in the chat here, if you have a question throughout this broadcast, make sure to just tag @LumixCameras before it so it pops up on my screen here and I can address it. And we have a couple of questions, so actually let's jump right into that. So, one of the questions here from Cliff says, does the GH5 Mark II hide auto shutter and auto aperture values in video? The GH5 does this. The S1 original firmware did this, but it was changed later in the firmware. I assume what you mean, Cliff, is while you're actually like filming or looking on the back of the camera, is it showing you what the ISO or the aperture values are? As far as I know, I believe the GH5 Mark II does support that. I can double check. I just have to make sure if my GH5 Mark II battery is charged. But if you're talking about in like things like metadata and stuff like that, I would have to dig deeper and see. Since that camera doesn't support RAW over HDMI, I don't think that info is in metadata. But otherwise on camera, it should show you the auto shutter, aperture, and ISO value. See here, Tom says, quick question. I've installed a new firmware update, but I don't see any change in the video resolution settings. Let's see which camera do you have and which settings are you looking for? If you can give me a little more information, Tom, I will be able to hopefully address which camera and where to look for it. Sacred City. For realistic study, you need very other option to be considered scientific. Very true. And nice to see some Northeast brethren going on the pork roll Taylor ham conversation. For those that don't know, I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up in North Jersey, so it is Taylor ham, and that's the final say. Let's see here. Can I go back and look at the old streams? Yes, you can. If you go on to the Lumix Cameras YouTube channel, which is the one that you're probably watching this on right now, unless you're watching it embedded in another website, There's a playlist set up for Lumix Live. That Lumix Live playlist has every single Lumix Live that we've done, dating back to April of 2020, I believe. Yeah, we're a little over a year doing these. There were maybe like one or two that are actually housed over on the Facebook page because we started doing this over on Facebook, but most of the stuff has been migrated over onto YouTube, and every single one is there. I don't have everything annotated on all of the original videos because it wasn't something that we were doing at that time, so I apologize if you want to actually go through and see all of the annotations. Unfortunately, they're just not all there. Let's see here. All thing. Let's see here. Yeah, you can. Okay, yeah. Other people just bringing that up too. Let's see here. Food. Does new firmware update have any major changes? Is it for the GH5? So, the original GH5 did not have any new firmware update, and that actually kind of segues right into kind of what I wanted to show today. So, when we talk about the new firmware update, and this is just a recap of what has come out over the last month, maybe a little longer than a month, because we'll talk about some of the stuff that came out at the end of, oh man, we're in July now. So through June, May, June, and July, since we've had actually a lot of firmware update coming out over this time. One of the locations that you can check, or actually the location that you can check to see if your camera actually has a firmware update for it, is our global firmware update page, which I just dropped into the chat here. And you'll see, basically, if you're looking at it, we've got it segmented out into the full frame cameras and lenses, micro four thirds cameras, compact cameras, which is point and shoot cameras, and then there's others for older stuff if you've got some older imaging equipment that is out there. But, if we look at the micro four thirds cameras that we've got out, you'll see that back on July 1st, July 9th, and July 13th, we have actually released a couple of new updates here. So the G9 got an update, the BGH1 got an update on July 1st, and the GH5S got an update on July 1st, as well as the G100. For each of these different cameras, there's a couple different things that got added to them. So, like if we're looking at the GH5S right here, you'll see we have a pretty simple little thing that just kind of goes through what's actually been added. So back on June 9th, the GH5S received the RAW over HDMI update. So that means that the GH5S can support RAW over HDMI to the Atomos Ninja 5, and I believe now the Ninja 5 Plus as well, or Ninja V Plus, however you pronounce that or call it. As well as it added some new updated AF algorithms to bring it in line with what we've released for cameras like the S5 and the rest of the S series. Added a couple of other really cool kind of feature additions here. So the red frame record indicator has been added on the GH5S. You have the ability to set the camera up to do the vertical recording. So if you're someone who's starting to notice that you're getting more clients or more interest in actually displaying vertical footage for things like Instagram stories advertising, Snapchat advertising, it is a big thing for companies like ours, especially, where you're starting to actually see, because more people are consuming content on mobile devices, it's a lot easier to just shoot the footage vertically and deliver it out. I know some of us are maybe a little more purist in that kind of thought process that video should be 16 by 9, not 9 by 16, but the camera allows you to do it. And it's a toggle, so you can turn it on and off. We've also added some other things like the video guidelines in the GH5, the GH5S. But one of the things just to make sure is that you're using the version 2.1, which is updated here. And a quick note actually on the firmware updates, I see this question a lot online. You don't have to do updates to your camera in order that they were released. So if you didn't download version 2.0 for whatever reason, you can easily just go right to 2.1 and it carries everything over from the previous updates. You can technically even go all the way back from version 1.1 all the way up to version 2.1, which is basically if you've got a camera early and you do that, that's what you're going to do. But yeah, it gets you all of the included updates there. Let's take a look, see if we have any other questions here so far. Okay, so Tom's got an S1. You're saying, I think he's figured out MOV format supports 4K recording. Yeah, so most of the updates for the S1 are included in the MOV file format recording. And actually, I'm going to bring up the S1's actual full list of what came out in the firmware updates over the last month, so we can actually talk about it and tell you where to find all this stuff. Let's see here. At Lumix, why does the S1 not have 1080 24p, 10-bit 24p 1080, but the S5, its baby brother, does? Isn't the S5 an entry-level camera? Honestly, I'm not sure exactly what the deal is. Why the S1 does have 1080p 24 frame, but it is in the HEVC mode, where the S5 does have a 10-bit 24p 1080 resolution option. It is something that I would bring up to our team in Japan, which is another side benefit of these streams. As you guys comment, things that you're missing or that you want to see in the cameras, we read all these things and we pass it over to our team so they can actually review it and see if it's something that could possibly be updated. Let's see here. Heard the G9 update for animal detecting. So good. This. I am one of the biggest proponents of try it before judging what others are saying about firmware updates. No matter what brand you're in, no matter what camera you use, there are always people that are going to just rally against it. But if you look at a lot of the people that are using the camera, the autofocus update for that camera has made some pretty big improvements. I would just encourage you to try it if you have the opportunity to. Let's see. FC's asking, if I downgrade firmware, will it damage my camera? Well, no, mainly because you can't downgrade firmware. Once you install a firmware update on the cameras, you can't revert back to an old firmware version, so it is on the most current after you update them. What are the questions we got here? Let's see here. Bought an S5 in, I'm guessing, March, but registered that camera first today. I haven't got any confirmation from the extended guarantee, but for others, bought in the end of June. Depending on the region where you're in, it could just be down to backlog of confirming it, but if you've submitted it, just make sure that, when you submit it, that all your information's there, your email's there, and you can reach out to the local support team for warranties, the extended warranty program, stuff like that, to try to get a status update. In some cases, it could just depend on the region you're in and just how backlogged that particular time might be. And then let's see here. One of the other questions. When I focus far away to close up with the 100 to 300 G9, I have to manually focus to get it close to focus, and then it will focus there. Any setting that can help with this. One of the tricks that when I used to work over the counter, working with photographers when it comes to a lot of these cameras, is if you're going from a really far distance to a really close distance on the cameras, usually one of the things you want to look at is, obviously, step one, does the lens have a limiter? The 100 to 300 doesn't. Make sure that you're not within the close focus range. Otherwise, if you're using the 225 point autofocus mode on that camera, so you're letting the camera pick the focus point, try changing the camera over into one area and make it kind of a moderately sized box. And that usually helps with a lot of the different cases. So you're not letting the camera just make a decision on where it's going to focus. You're telling it what region to look at. GH6 not ready? Question mark. I just don't have any more information to share about the GH6 yet. Make sure you stay subscribed, get on the email lists, and of course you'll hear when updates come out through those channels. I can attest to the 2.4 firmware for the G9 makes the AF pretty solid. Very cool, all things. Yeah. All right, so let's go back to Tom's question here, which was about the S1, and actually let's talk a little bit about what the S series cameras got as far as firmware updates go. So As a lot of people have been seeing and following with what's going on in the video side of the industry, if you are someone who likes to capture videos and you use Lumix cameras primarily for this, the advent of RAW over HDMI in mirrorless cameras has really taken off over the last year. And one of our goals here at Lumix is to make it a very seamless, process to work with for anyone that wants to shoot in any of these different modes. Whether you're someone who works with Atomos and you want to work on the ProRes RAW side of this, so if, say, you're a Final Cut Pro editor, it's a very directly integrated codec into Final Cut. Or if you're someone who uses DaVinci Resolve, now you've got Blackmagic RAW through a Video Assist 12G model, so it has to be a 12G HDR model. And that's what will let you do the Blackmagic RAW to either the SD cards on the recorder or over USB on the connection on the bottom of the recorder itself. So with this firmware update that we released for the S1 on July 13th, this is where it has added in that 5.9K, the 4K, and the 3.5K anamorphic recording in 12-bit RAW over HDMI. So one of the things that I get a lot of questions about when it comes to working with that is if I'm using... so I have my S1 just kind of plugged in right here, so we can talk about this real quick. Once you plug in the recorder over HDMI into your camera, and it doesn't matter if you've got the Ninja 5 or if you've got the Video Assist 12G HDR monitor attached to it, all you're going to have to do is press the menu button. You're going to go into the video recording menu, which you'll see here. It's the first one. And then just go down to raw data output. Once you turn this on, the camera is going to automatically communicate with which recorder you've got attached to it, and then it will serve up the correct raw signal or raw package information that it needs depending on the recorder that you're using. So it really does become a simple plug-and-play setting depending on what monitor system you want to work with. The one thing to just make sure of is if you're using it in, say, like a way how I am. I have my S1 HDMI into my Blackmagic A10 Mini. You can't put raw data out into something like the A10 Mini or a monitor that doesn't support it because it doesn't know what that footage is. It's not a video signal. It's coming out as data into the different recorders. And a note on that is if there's anyone in the chat that shoots anamorphic or is planning to shoot in an anamorphic style recording where you want to use that 4:3 aspect ratio that the camera now supports over HDMI in RAW formats, the format that actually comes out of the camera in RAW is actually 4:3 aspect ratio. If you were to set the camera up in the anamorphic mode on a just standard internal recording mode, so if it's just MOV, you're plugging it in so that you can record, say, like ProRes, not ProRes RAW, just regular ProRes 422, that would be a 4:3 aspect ratio video file or video stream within a 16:9. So when you go to de-squeeze, you'll get pillar boxes and letterboxing on it. So just a little bit of a note there about if you're using that kind of recording setup. Let's see, what other question before I go further with the firmware updates? Can the DJI RS2 connect to the S1, control the focus by using the focus wheel? Yes, it can. The RS2 and the RSC2, when you plug in the USB cable into the camera control, just make sure that all of the different firmware is updated on the camera and on the gimbal. You can go in there and set the front control wheel to control your manual focus for it. So it definitely does do that. Let's see here. And then the other question, okay, all things commenting, you should be able to check with DJI Sight. Yeah, so one of the things to definitely take a look at is DJI Sight. Because in the recent update that added the active track support, they did also add the focus control and some other added control benefits to the S1R if you're using that camera for video or for stills, since the gimbal has some pretty cool stills use cases as well. Let's see here. Is the S1H capable of recording 6K 60 at full frame? I mean, is it possible by firmware update, or will it be in some sort of successor? So 6K 60 frames per second, the S1H does not support the full frame 60p options. So that's why you've got 6K 24 frames per second. A lot of times when you look at stuff like this, it's usually down to the existing hardware of what was available at the time when the cameras were built. That's why you'll always see some leapfrogging between different models, even within our own brand. So one of the things that we get questions a lot about is how is it that the S5 can do a ton of these recording options when they weren't available on an S1 at start? In which you got to remember is the S5 is 2 years newer than the S1. So technology changes very quickly in a year. So as new things come out, newer cameras will always have more features and functionality of it. If you are following the tech industry at all, this was a very similar thing that happened with NVIDIA and the RTX cards, jumping from an RTX 2080 or 2080 Ti, which was like I think it's like a $1,600 card, to an RTX 3070, which was really close to the same performance, or the 3080. They're really close in performance, but the new generations were like half the price. Technology just gets better and better and less expensive in some cases as things progress further and further. But what we do at Panasonic is we try to provide these firmware updates as things move forward, and based on what hardware capabilities are in the previous cameras. So cameras like the GH5 got tons of support over its lifetime for new features that were added as we were developing things further and further. Some things can't be ported back, like the GH5 and the GH5 Mark II. They're not supporting RAW over HDMI. It's different hardware than, different sensors, different processor, different hardware than what you see in cameras like the S series or an S5, or even in a camera like the BGH1 or a GH5S. So little differences there. As far as 6K 60 goes, to go back directly to that question, that's hardware. It's a 6K 24p 3:2 aspect ratio sensor. FC, when taking burst modes in RAW photo, buffer can fill up before all the photos get stored to the card. Is it possible to cancel saving burst photos to the card if I change my mind? No. It is something that would be cool to set up, but I don't know what the feasibility of doing that would be, because even if you power the camera off and drop the battery, it would stop that, but I am in no way advocating doing that, because you will corrupt files, you will wreck memory cards if you do that kind of thing. But yeah, there's not really a way to stop the buffer from clearing, because it's process. As the buffer's filled, it has to offload and clear that buffer before you can proceed to go on to the next step. Rec Production says, how can I do the auto record on the Ninja V when I press to record on the S1? That is a very good question. So if I switch over to my S1 here, as you can see, one of the things that you're going to want to do when you're connecting in any kind of external recorder is you're going to want to go into the camera menu. The first thing you're going to want to do is go into timecode. Go down and set, typically, this is how I do it. And this is probably the most secure way to do it. Not secure way, that's not really the right word for it. This is probably the recommended way to do it. Turn your timecode display on. Then you're going to go down and you're going to set HDMI timecode output on, because you need timecode being sent out over HDMI. Once you have both of those activated and turned on, then you're going to scroll down and you're going to go to the HDMI rec output menu, and you're going to go to HDMI recording control and turn that on. Once you have both of these options on, you'll see in the top left of the display here, you'll see a little HDMI symbol with a pause icon, and that is indicating that the camera is ready to send HDMI triggering information out to the recorder of your choice. The last little step that you have to do and just make sure that you've got the recorder set up right is that the triggering information for the recorder, whether you're using a Blackmagic recorder or you're using, say, the Atomos Ninja 5 or any Atomos at that point, if you're just using it for ProRes, you just have to make sure that it is looking for the trigger information from timecode over HDMI. That's the step that a ton miss as you're going through. You get the camera set up perfect, but then the monitor is looking for the triggering info in the wrong location. Each monitor is a little different as to how you set it up, so I can't give you a blanket, hey, do this, and it'll work for all of them. But the Ninja 5, I know when you click on the input menu option, look at trigger and just make sure that it's pulling trigger from HDMI. And I believe there's also the time code there. So you do that. In the video assist, you go in there and you can do the same thing, time code triggering over HDMI, and you should be all set. Let's see here. What other questions? All right, so we got Rex question done. The focus wheel can control the lenses, must be L mount, right? DJI RS2 question. I don't think so. I mean, they have to be L mount lenses, so like you've got to be, you know, lenses that are being converted over to L mount. I don't have my MS, or not MS2, that's a microphone. My MC21 to check EF mount lenses through the adapter on here. So I haven't tested it because I haven't had my adapter for a while now. But I know with like my Sigma 45mm here, which is a native new L mount lens from Sigma, or I have a 24mm 1.4 Art Sigma lens, which is the converted L mount version, that it works on that one. It works okay, but that's a manually or a mechanically geared manual focus, so I'm not sure if those lenses support it. But that is something that you could definitely check with DJI with as well. So here, Neil's asking, are there any updates on the possibility of linear focus for the older G-series cameras like the GH5S? Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't have any updates on what cameras or lenses can or will support the linear focusing. I know that it is something that we've pushed a lot here on the US team and has been commented about in the chat a lot. And as soon as we get more information, we'll definitely be talking about it if it's something that can happen and if we can get more info out to you. So as we get more info, we'll let you know. All right, how's that look on some questions there? Linear focus, or is it limited hardware? Okay, that was the question that I just read before. Sorry. Looking pretty good on questions here. I'm going to test the 24mm on the 2.4 update. Wow, I can't read today. All right, cool. So let's continue looking at some of this firmware update goodness. So one of the other things that we added in with the firmware updates for a lot of the cameras is a couple new color profiles into the camera. So the S1, S1R, S1H, S5, they all now support the L Classic Neo and the L Monochrome S color profiles. So if you're somebody who likes to shoot stills and you like to have a fairly, delivery-ready look, we've got a couple of these profiles now that are maybe a little more, definitely a little more specialized. I don't know if these are going to be profiles that you're going to be actively going out of your way to go shoot if you're trying to get, perfect color matching or things like that. That's what profiles like Vlog or like 709 or HLG, or in this case, it's actually like 2100. That's really what those profiles are for. L Classic Neo and L Monochrome S are going to give you a very different look than you might normally be seeing in some of these cameras. So the L Classic Neo, it's going to be that kind of more retro-styled color palettes. It's going to be maybe a little more pastel looking in the colors. You have the ability to put different color grain effect on there, as well as like noise grain or film grain effect on it. which just gets you a couple more options to just make out of the camera JPEGs a little more your style or a little more unique from everybody else's. And then the L monochrome S profile is it's another monochrome profile added in here that's, maybe a little more subdued in some of the contrast, a little bit changed in some of the sharpness, and just the highlight and shadow details there. So you have a couple different options that you can play there. There's been a couple of people online that have actually done some pretty cool stuff with the L Classic Neo profile in creating some very stylized video production look with it in camera. And ultimately, as we start to look at some of these things, it's all of these different tools in these cameras are there so that you can really create your own style. And if you're not someone who likes to work in a log profile or work in a raw video editing profile, getting it right in camera is definitely a really cool, easy way to get yourself, working and getting a product out to your clients. Because ultimately, no matter what you're doing production-wise, if you put it up on a forum and you ask a whole bunch of videographers and photographers what their opinions are on it, you're going to get an individual opinion from every single one of those people, and most likely they're all going to be different. Where ultimately it's, does your client enjoy what you've created? Do you enjoy what you've created? Is it your style? So don't ever let anyone go in there and start kind of hounding on you for necessarily a color choice in how you stylize your look. If it fits the project and your client loves it and it's something you love, that's great. They're not to disparage anyone's comments and support in there. There are definitely reasons and times where you want to be fully color accurate, and that's where things, again, like Vlog or Vlog L come in handy for most people like that. Let's see here. We got a couple more questions that just came in, too. So let's see here. When I'm in shutter mode, I'm not seeing the actual exposure. It's until I halfway press down the shutter and I achieve focus when I see the exposure I'll get. Why is this? I think I actually saw your comment on one of the Facebook groups, I believe, Emmanuel. So a couple things to take a look at in this case. One is, do you have the exposure compensation system turned on? So that's usually one of the first things that I always go through in the troubleshooting with this. If you've got that turned on, depending on the camera that you're in, there are a couple different modes that are available for it that would kind of help determine what your look is. The other thing to take a look at is, are you in aperture, or well, you said you're in shutter priority. Yes, you said you're in shutter priority mode. The other thing to take a look at is, do you have your ISO set to auto ISO, or are you picking an ISO? And when you look at that part, depending on how those are set up, the next thing would be to look down at the bottom bar on the camera. So if you look down in the bottom right now, you'll see I have shutter priority for video, 180 degree shutter angle, f3.9, and then a plus and minus 0. That plus and minus 0 is your exposure kind of meter. So it's telling you how over or underexposed you are. Depending on the mode that you're in, some modes will have a full, actually, close to a what you see is what you get view. Others, you have to look at that mode on the bottom, or that line on the bottom, to determine if it's going to see how far over or underexposed you are. So, little differences just depending on how you've got the camera. The newer cameras like the S5 does allow you to do the what is it called? Constant preview. Lets you use constant preview and have it only control aperture instead of shutter speed, so you're not getting that the double effect of exposure and shutter speed. The other option in shutter priority is one of the custom function buttons on the camera can be programmed to image preview, which will, when pressed, show you aperture and shutter preview values. So in some cases, you may see the image actually really kind of slow down if you're setting, say, like a 10-second exposure. When you turn that preview on, it's actually going to update the screen every 10 seconds because it's basically showing you the exposure that you're shooting. to see. So it works in really good light, not the ideal situation to use in low light scenarios, though. So hopefully that answers a little bit of the question. Let's see here. Is there a limitation on the G9 that it can't do the additive frame feature like the G95 can? So you're saying a live view composite. I've asked. I don't know if the G9 has the hardware to support live view composite, but it is something that we are asking about. I know in the chat here we've talked about it almost every week. It has been brought up in some level, and again, as soon as we get information, we'll let everybody know. Let's see here. Mr. Sardo, I accidentally recorded my GH5S overlay to my Atomos footage. Oh no. But if there's any way to add an extra warning that you'll be recording a dirty screen when you hit record on your Atomos. I don't know if there'd be a way to trigger any kind of information like that. Since you're just sending the signal out, other than just I hate saying it, other than just having to pay attention onto the actual Atomos monitor. Yeah, it's definitely a frustrating thing when you get a shot done and you realize that you've got the overlay info there. But usually, one of the things I can usually advise some people is if you get yourself in a habit of just always sending a clean HDMI signal out and using the rear display mode on the camera that actually shows you... Actually, I don't know if I can... I might be able to actually set my camera up to show it. Does this? Yeah. So getting your camera set up so that the panel that you see now on the screen in the kind of top left of my display here, getting it to where you always have that display on the back of the camera can help, get you in that mindset where you know that your HDMI is always going to be clean out. Yeah, the other thing is it just depends on what monitors you use. If you jump back and forth between different monitors, that can be frustrating. Like I've got a Portkeys monitor that I've been using that I use the overlay on from my camera, like the BGH1, since that supports touch interface on the Portkeys BM5WR. When I jump from using that monitor to the Ninja to record ProRes RAW, I do have to remember to go in to turn the info display off, since you can toggle that display through HDMI, SDI, or just off. But yeah, if you're shooting RAW, it actually just disables all of that anyway. Let's see here. Any chance of a future firmware update where we can get dual recording with proxies? This has been something that we've asked for a very long time. I do not know if it is something that is... I'm pretty sure it's something that's hardware as to why you can't do proxies in the system. But it is something that we do consistently bring up and raise to our engineers. So thanks for the comment about it. Let's see here. Have you tried the Sigma 35 F2 autofocus? Is it great? I have not tried the Sigma 35 F2. I use the 45 2.8 and the 24mm 1.4. Those are my own personal lenses, and they're perfectly fine for what I do. The 45 is faster than the 24 because the 24 is a DSLR lens rehoused for rehoused for mirrorless. Roger says, my question you read but didn't answer, oh, I'm sorry, was about the L-mount Sigma lenses in hardware limited for linear focus options. Oh, okay. Now I understand your question. So when it comes to linear focusing with, say, other lenses in the L-mount alliance, it's going to fully depend on what hardware they're using in their lenses. Do they actually communicate positioning information? What motors are they using? Stuff like that. All of our lenses do support it in the S-series cameras because it is a design goal with our lenses and the motors that we choose to use for focusing control and, focusing control. So it's really a question... I hate always saying this, but it really is a question over for Sigma if it is something that the linear focus control is something that's on their radar to support with their lenses. But I know There is some confusion because if you have a lens like the 45 millimeter that's an L mount and you buy the Sigma dock to attach the lens to, you can program different focus throw values. It's not the same as linear versus nonlinear, but it does change the actual degree and everything that you work with. So it makes it a little better for certain situations. Like if you're a photographer, it makes it actually a lot easier because you can change it to a short throw for focusing. Video, it works a little bit, but honestly, 90% of the time, if I'm using my two Sigma lenses for video, it's usually something like attached up on the camera that I'd be using for, educational videos or streaming. And usually I may have that just set up as manual focus because I'm not moving a ton. I do have my BGH1 set up with the, which lens is on there? The 12 millimeter Summilux in just one area AF. So it's right here. So if I had to at some point show you guys something, I'd be able to put it up and you'd be able to actually see it because it would focus. Let's see here. So hopefully Roger, that was a good enough answer for you. About as much as I can answer it. Magnus says, is it in any way possible to have your settings or time code mirror to the recording internally or to the Ninja by mistake? To have time code settings or time code mirror in to the recording. You mean just have time code show up on the recording and not the rest of the UI? If that's what you mean by it, just let me know in the chat, because I'll try to answer that question if I can. Let's see the other question. Let's see here. Michael says, we film in dirty conditions quite a bit. I use a blower to keep sensor whatnot somewhat clean. Do you have recommendations for cleaning the sensor with an appropriate tool or sending it in? This is going to be a non-answer from me. Well, I mean, I'll answer it, but it's a non-committal answer. You are always free to do your own sensor cleaning. However, there is a ton of risk that does get involved if you're doing sensor cleanings because you can potentially damage the cover glass. Just as a point, you're never actually cleaning the sensor, you're cleaning the cover glass on top of the sensor. There are many different methods of cleaning sensors. There's wet cleaning, there's dry cleaning, there's using things like the little kind of puffer air blower things. They all work to varying different levels. If you want the best possible process of cleaning, sending it in and actually getting it professionally cleaned is going to be the best option. Usually when you if you send a camera in to us for sensor cleaning, say if you're on that platinum tier LPS program and you want to send your camera in for sensor cleaning, usually they're done, well, not usually, they are done in clean rooms. They're done to a much higher level than what you would do just in your living room or in your office, that kind of thing, to clean them. And they're done with, kind of industry spec equipment. So you know that you're getting just as if it was built in a factory. If you do decide to do it on your own, I just highly encourage people to do a ton of research before buying equipment, and stick away from the gimmicky kind of tools that some create to magically make things go away. You never want to put anything on the cover glass that could potentially scratch it or leave a residue, because that will show up in your images over time. But yeah, sorry it's not a clear answer, but I cannot, as working with the brand, I cannot recommend you cleaning your own sensors, because there is a potential to damage it, and if you damage it, it's out of warranty at that point because it's inflicted damage. But yeah, there's always options out there. You can always check with a local dealer, and some local dealers, if you've got a photo retailer near you, at least here in the United States, some photo retailers do have sensor cleaning services that they might offer. So that could always also be a really good option. And usually they're not too expensive. Let's see here. What are the questions we got? You're clarifying every question so good. It's great. Awesome. Cool. What's the pricing for the paid tier? Good question. In the United States, if you're looking at the platinum tier for Lumix Pro Services, it's a $199 program in the United States for platinum. And I will actually pull that up. Lumix Pro Services. I'll actually pull up the US page so you can actually take a look at it, and we shall take a look. So with the Lumix Pro Services, with the Platinum tier, you'll see you've got the couple different layers here. The red tier, like I said, is free. Then you have the $199 program, which is the Platinum tier. There have been some situations where we have run a promotion where you can get Platinum as an included benefit in some cases with certain camera purchases. But one of the things to take a look at is go to the eligibility page, and it'll tell you what current systems, what kind of requirements you might need to get into the program. LPS Red right now is as long as you have a camera or a lens, you can get yourself registered, not a problem. LPS Platinum is actually, in the United States, we're running a promotion right now where you can have just a single S-Series camera body, or 2 G-Series and 3 lenses gets you into the Platinum tier, so that you can get the program set up on your side. Let's see. Some other questions came in. What defines an autofocus area for 225 area autofocus when it's contrast detect? For phase detect, each AF area is a phase detect sensor. Okay. So in the 225 area autofocus mode for the Lumix cameras that support 225, others may only support 49 because that's just the areas. It's regions that the system is using to calculate out for depth from defocus and the contrast calculations that are done. So it's just a matter of whether or not you've got 225 sectors that it's using to record and, kind of monitor that information, or 49 depending on the other camera. A lot of it is a similar logic to how most autofocus systems work, especially since the fact that all hybrid systems end in contrast anyway. So it's using a region of the sensor and telling the algorithms what region to do the calculations in. Roger says, thanks for the answer. Maybe the linear option should be grayed out when using Sigma lenses. I've seen some people say that they think it works because you can change the values. That is a good suggestion, and one that actually would I will make sure to pass up to the team. It's a creative option. Yeah, thank you for that, Roger. Let's see, any plans to expand the availability of the Pro services? Currently, there are only 11 countries, with a 12th one coming soon. So, yeah, the programs are always expanding. And as you can see on the current program that you see here, these are the countries that have it deployed right now. It looks like Australia is coming soon. I think, yep, is coming soon. So, yeah, as regions come on, reach out to your local Panasonic region if you don't see the country listed here, and just reach out to them. Have a conversation directly with them. Since I represent the United States side of our business, that's why I can speak so confidently and direct about the U.S. program, just because it's the region I work for. But we do communicate across regions as well, too, though. So. Let's see here. Recording anything you have on the screen. You don't want to have it in your recording as a setting, time code, and also the right in your picture, internal, ninja, anything but the picture. Oh, sure. Let's see here. Martin says, hi Sean, the Leica HX012 is the only lens that is not listed in the lens firmware update site. Any reason why? I was expecting to use it with focus ring control. There actually is a reason for that. Mainly because the 12mm 1.4 just has not received a firmware update. Since we've released it, there hasn't really been a reason to. That being said, it is one of the lenses that I have pushed back with our team in Japan as a recommended lens that, if possible, and if it does support it, I would love to see the linear focus control on a lens like that. So, again, as we get more information, as I hear more from our teams in Japan, we would update everybody as soon as we hear stuff like that. So if you don't see a lens listed, and for those that are wondering, this is the page that we were looking at. If you don't see a lens listed here, it just means that there hasn't been a firmware update for it, that it's on 1.0, it's what it released as. And actually, to a point on this page, make sure if you're looking, so like June 8th, we released all of these firmware updates for the linear focus control, or the focus ring control. So these are the lenses that are, that are compatible. When you look at lenses like the 12 to 35 f2.8 and 35 to 100 2.8, these are the HSA models, which means these are the models that are basically the black exterior, not the kind of infamous purple-ish exterior that the original versions of the 12 to 35 and 35 to 100 have. So a little bit of a difference in there. You can always find the... I don't have my lens here with me. Oh, I do. I have a Nocticron here. You can always find the actual model number of the lens if you look. It would help if I was actually on my face. So you can find the model number here on the bottom of the lens typically. That'll let you know which model lens you have to check the firmware update. Let's see here. We got time for a couple more questions. Let's see. Haven't followed Sigma lenses, but how are Sigma lens motors? Do they good motors as Panasonic do? Not necessarily a point of good or bad motors. It's just different styles. There's linear motors, there's stepper motors, and you use them for different reasons. We use linear motors in a vast majority of our lenses so that they're really quiet and they're very fast. And when you're working with our system, speed can be a key as to how fast you can move the optic. But then in some lenses like our 50mm 1.4S Pro, we actually use both. In our 70 to 200 2.8, we use both styles so that you can move heavier pieces of glass with, say, the stepper motor and then the linear motor for the fine tuning. Let's see here. Is the 16 to 35 f2.8 coming? What about the 35mm f1.8? Any dates? Unfortunately, I have no information on any other lenses other than what we've announced is coming. The 35 1.8 and the 24mm 1.8 will be coming out. I know I've had to say that a number of times, like, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, trust us, it's coming. As soon as we get more information, of course, I will definitely be letting everybody know, because 25 and 35mm are some of my favorite focal lengths. It's why I use the 12mm for this particular shot on my BGH1. I'd love to be able to, when I want to use my BGH1 for other projects, be able to put, my S1 up here with a 24mm 1.8 and get that, kind of shallowish depth of field there. As soon as I get information about that stuff, that we will be talking about it. As far as an ultra-wide lens, I just don't have any information about anything coming in the future yet. I would love to see a lens like that come out, but I don't get to make the decisions. So I can just pass the community's response up to our team to what y'all want to see. Let's see here. I have heard that it's possible on more professional cameras to mirror your settings right in your picture, but with a dreadful result. Would be grateful to know if it is not possible. I've heard that it's possible on more professional cameras to mirror your settings right in to your picture with a... I'm not sure if I'm following your question, Magnus. I apologize. Yeah, I'm really not sure. You're saying basically metadata or actually visually into the footage? I think that's where some of maybe the disconnect is, because so if you shoot RAW, so RAW over HDMI on the S1, the S5, or the S1H, RAW over HDMI does provide your metadata and all of that information. That is brought over. So you'll know what ISO you shot. You'll know what shutter speed you were shooting. I believe it does also tell you what aperture and lens you were shooting. I think some of that stuff might be buried in the metadata. But video metadata also, from my understanding, doesn't have the same kind of organization that stills metadata has, where you know basically everything about the shot you created. I might be speaking a little bit out on that one because truthfully I'm not fully up to date on video metadata, but I do know that there are differences between the way stills users are used to seeing the information and video users are used to seeing the info. Let's see here. Okay. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is, as we have been talking about the firmware updates and Blackmagic Raw being one of the big parts of the firmware update that came last month, there is one additional step that if you've got a video assist that you want to make sure that you've got, kind of ready to go so that you can actually create and capture with these. And that's making sure that your video assist is actually updated. So the Blackmagic Video Assist does have a firmware update package that you download from their site. You plug the video assist into your computer, and then it basically adds everything that it needs to support, in this case, Blackmagic Raw recording from the S1H, S1, and the S5. Once you have that set up, make sure you've got it powered, and it will let you get everything set up there. So make sure you've got this, and then if you're someone who edits with Adobe Premiere, make sure you're also using the correct plugin from Blackmagic. There's two of them last time I checked. One works, I believe, with the Premiere Beta. The other one works with the current, current to date Premiere release. So just make sure you have all of your equipment updated as you're going. If you're someone who's been using ProRes RAW or you want to get into using ProRes RAW, there's a couple other steps you want to make sure. You want to make sure you're downloading the ProRes RAW codec from Apple for your Windows computer if you're not on a MacBook or on a Mac ecosystem, so that you can play it into something like Premiere. You also want to make sure that, at least the last I checked, you're using NVIDIA graphics cards. I think you can use AMD graphics cards as well now. But the NVIDIA ones seem to be maybe a little bit better. And I promise you I'm not trying to shill NVIDIA because that's like the third time I've mentioned them. You want to make sure you're using studio drivers on the NVIDIA stuff, just because it's more stable for Premiere, things like that. Outside of this, okay, Magnus saying visual. Okay, so you're talking about visually having it have it mirrored over. So let me recap it here. So recording anything you have on the screen you don't want to have in your video recording as settings, time code, so forth, right on the picture, internal or to the Ninja, anything but the picture. Really trying to make sure that I'm following this. Is it any way possible to have your settings or time code mirror to the recording internal to the Ninja by mistake? Recording anything you have on the screen you don't want to have in your recording as settings, time code, picture, internal. Okay, so are you saying you want to be able to send the information to the external device while having the screen clear on the camera? I apologize if I am butchering what your question is. It might just be a slow day for me today. I know if you're looking to say, like, you want to use all of that information just off to an external monitor so your display on the camera is clear, I know you can't do that. What the camera does support is the ability to fully mirror the image and the UI over to the display. So like you see here, like I have, if I swap through my displays here right now you'll see that I have the actual like camera UI being shown. So we've got, all of my information showing. I've got the level gauge, all that kind of stuff. That's showing through my HDMI. So if I had this attached to a recorder, it would be recording this information. You'd see all of this, even the focus peaking lines. The only other thing you can do is go to HDMI rec output and then turn that off. And now it's a fully clean HDMI signal, which so in this case would be 10-bit out over HDMI, so that you can be using the external device to record with. Let's see here. Are there any plans to work with Sigma to enable support for focus ring control with Sigma DC-DN 1.4 fixed focal? I don't believe that's anything to do with working with another manufacturer. I think it's a matter of whether or not Sigma is actually going to add that support into their lenses through either their design or their hardware. So something like that is a question that does have to get prompted over to Sigma. The LMount Alliance, the information, the protocols, the mount specs, things like that are known between all three companies. It's part of why there's an alliance. You know what the specs are to build to. It's up to each manufacturer to be building the specs based on what their goals are. But inherently, they all do work across each other. Certain things might not be deployed by everybody. So let's see here. Maybe a silly question. The S&Q mode on the S5 is 20 megabit per second in 25p. If you shoot 100 frames per second in that 20 megabit for 100 frames, or 20 megabit for the first 25, or the 100... Wow. I think my brain just broke reading this question. Slow and quick mode on the S5 is 20 megabits per second in 25p. Yes. If you shoot 100 frames per second, is that 20 megabits for the 100 frames or 20 megabits for the first 25 of the... So, okay, now I follow. When you're in the slow and quick mode, if it's 20 megabit per second, you are outputting a 25p file. So the end result that you're getting is 25 frames per second. That means that that 25 frame per second video file that you're getting is going to be 20 megabits per second. If you're over cranking or under cranking a sensor. So if you're going to be doing 100 frame per second output in 25 for a quarter slow motion, that would be 20 megabits per second for the 100 frames per second that you're recording, because you're outputting in 25p. If that makes sense. It is, the more frames you record, the more the bit rate is spread through those frames, if that makes sense. And then, I get, Jordan, the only part of your question has come through. It says, there is a problem with the S1 and S5 where you, and then a follow-up with Ninja V. If you could finish the question or the comment, I'll definitely try to address and see what's up. There was a firmware update that added, that addressed a couple little oddities with some of the Ninja recorders. So you definitely just want to make sure that you're up to date on all firmware. And you should be good. Megabit is the quality of video, amount of compression, frames per second is the FPS frames per second. Yeah. So, like FC was saying, it's a matter of your bit rate is going to be fixed for the frame rate that you're shooting. The number of frames that you're putting into that mode is where things like variable frame rate or slow and quick mode change the calculation a little bit. Typically, you're really only worrying about what frame rate you're shooting at and what the bit rate is for the end result goal there. Okay. Let's see here. While we wait for to see if Jordan, if you're still there, I will wait a little bit longer to address that question. But I want to remind everybody, as we've said numerous times throughout this stream, we have the LUMIX Pro Services platform, which is available in the United States and in a number of other regions as well. In the United States, we have that red tier, which we talked about before, and we also have the platinum tier for those that want maybe that next level of protection. If you're in the US, you can take a look at lumix-pro.us or use the QR code that is on the slide right now. If you are joining us from other regions, you can take a look at the link that I just dropped into the chat. This will bring you to the global landing page for the different regions that support LUMIX Pro services, so that you can check out what kind of support level is available in your region and what equipment is needed for those different tiers in those different regions as well. As a reminder, if you are also looking to make sure that you get your camera firmware updated, you can take a look at this link that I just dropped in the chat, and this will get you right over to the location where you can pull up your camera, download the firmware, check out the files, see what was added to it, what features are new to your setup. A quick note for those that are using the S1, which we talked about a little bit before. The RAW over HDMI updates for both the ProRes RAW as well as the Atomos or the Blackmagic RAW, and all of these new recording modes for things like 6K, Cinema 4K, anamorphic modes, that RAW over HDMI, you do need to have the DMW SFU2 unlock for your camera to support these, because these modes will all be in the MOV recording format. So make sure if you've got this, if you're not seeing any of this, double check and make sure if you've got that SFU2 upgrade on your camera, so that you can make sure that you've got that stuff set up. Let's see here. Michael's asking, any firmware updates coming for the S1H? Sorry if this was asked already. It was not asked already. I'm actually surprised. I was waiting for someone to ask that. Fortunately, I have no information about any new updated firmware for an S1H. About as much as I do know is that we did just release this update for the S1H back on the 13th as well. This added that DJI RS2 and RSC2 active track functionality. So you do have that firmware update that has come out. And then you've got just some stability improvements over HDMI. So there have been some major updates that have come out for the S1H. So I encourage everyone to go over, take a look at the site that I dropped in the link, and get yourself updated. And let's see here. Are there any G-Series lens supporting linear focus? Yeah, so we actually talked about that a little bit back on this page. If I go to Micro Four Thirds, if I scroll down and take a look at the lenses, any of the lenses that got the update on June 8th, those lenses have been updated to support linear focus throw on the GH5 Mark II. That is currently the only camera that supports linear focus or focus ring control in the Micro Four Thirds category at this time. I don't know or have any information if other cameras can or will support it, but as of right now, it's the GH5 Mark II, and that camera in combination with these lenses and their firmware updates will support linear focus throw as well as focus ring degree throw. All right, let's see here. Okay, rest of the question, Jordan. Cool. When recording to the external recorder and using camera control with the RS2, you lose the rear screen. Okay. Now I'm following what the comment question is. So yes, as of right now, I am still looking to get more information as to what it is with the S1 and the S5. But the S1H supports USB control to a gimbal while still outputting the HDMI signal, so you can have the screen here, and the control all running at the same time. The S1 and the S5 currently, from my understanding, do not support it. I have reached out to get more information, and again, as I get more information, I will be letting people know. I just don't have any update for anybody at this time, so I apologize. Now that I understand what your question was. Let's see here. Is there any trouble after firmware update for S1 when I am tethering? I remember before there's lots of issues. Haven't heard a single person complain about tethering with the S1. And I've tethered with the S1 actually a lot recently. Everything should be working perfectly fine. Any chance Vlog is coming to an S1R? Not sure if it was asked. I highly doubt the S1R is going to get Vlog. Vlog is a profile that has to be created for the sensor and the engine to determine if the sensor is even capable of working with that profile. Those things are never just a plug and play. It's the same reason why you can't just throw Vlog in a camera that's been spec'd for Vlog L. Just doesn't work like that. And the S1R, truthfully, the S1R is a photography camera that just happens to do some video. Yes, it did get the 5K, 5x3 or 5x4, 4x5 recording in HLG. and it did get 10-bit out over HDMI. But it's really not a video camera. It was never billed as a video camera. We've never pushed it as a video camera. So I do not believe that camera is going to be getting vlog, but we will always ask. We will always bring these points up to our engineers and see if it is something that is being planned and we just don't know about. But yeah, at this time, I'm going to bank on probably not. Let's see here. I got my S1. I got Lumix S1 from Amazon from day one, never unlocked. How do I proceed to unlock it? Already running version 2.0. So if you've got an S1 and you do not have the SFU2 upgrade, you have to purchase the SFU2 unlock. It is a feature unlock for it. It's not a standard firmware update. It's actually a totally different kind of process. You look up DMW SFU2. Once you get that, you'll get a code. Yes, it's a mailed code to you in a box. You go to our website, follow the instructions, and it service unlocks the camera so that you can have things like MOV. You get the RAW over HDMI. You get a number of added recording codecs, and really changes the camera more for the video pro users versus, kind of normal everyday users that might not need things like the vlog recording. Martin says, what I miss on Micro Four Thirds platform compared to full frame is the set manual focus consistently, i.e. via distance or virtual scale. Is that a limitation of Micro Four Thirds protocol, or will that limit also GH6? I think I understand what your question is you're talking about the difference in being able to rotate the lens and say every time I do this, it always lands at the same point. If I believe that's what you're referencing. And that's actually one of the kind of things that we were just talking about, is that the GH5 Mark II, with that list of lenses that I showed, supports what's called linear focus. So while the lens is still focused by wire and not a mechanically coupled focal ring or focus ring, while it's still focused by wire, it's able to map out and say, okay, if I turn 90 degrees, I'm going to go from near focus to infinity focus. Or if I want to turn 150 degrees, that is going all the way from near focus to infinity focus. And you have the ability to program it so that it is set up as a linear actuation, so it's not speed dependent. It'll always just be point to point. Or you can set it how most mirrorless lenses function today, where it is a variable speed, which means if you spin it faster, you'll jump all the way to the end. If you spin it slower, it'll take you forever to go. The S-series cameras support linear focus with all LUMIX lenses. And I think there are some other lenses that do support linear focus because they have the equipment. Sigma lenses don't support it at the moment. But again, if that's something you're looking for, reach out to Sigma, get in contact with them. Micro Four Thirds, the GH5 Mark II supports it with the list of lenses. It's a fairly large list. It's not every single lens because it does depend if that lens has the hardware for it. John says, will L Classic Neo come to the S1H? Let me double check. I think it did. Maybe it didn't. Yeah, maybe it didn't. That is something that we will ask and double check on. I'll actually double check on my S1H because I think I left my camera on and I don't use sleep timers on my camera. Yes. So my camera's dead. Yeah, it's dead. So a suggestion for the Windows Tether app. Now it's only possible to see the last image you take. It would be great if you could scroll through all the images. That is definitely actually a good recommendation. I know that a lot of people, if you're using the Tether app, if you're using it just to preview, that's definitely something that I can recommend into our team to see. Otherwise, usually if I'm using Tether, I have it where I'm storing a copy local on the computer itself. So I usually have 2 or 3 monitors. Like I got 2 here, 1 here, the big one right here. one of these will usually have the folder that all the files are going into opened up as a preview, and then I can just cycle through them. But that's not really exactly what you were looking for. But yeah, I'll pass that into the team to see if it's something that could be done. This camera is as you show. You got it totally right now. Thanks. Okay, cool. Gotcha. Glad we were finally able to get to a point for you, Magnus. Another question about tethering. Any news when it would be possible to work with Adobe Lightroom? My understanding is ask Adobe. The LUMIX S-Series cameras and a few of the G-Series cameras, we do have a publicly available SDK that has camera control functionality. We released it when we released the BGH1, so it does exist. And it is communicated out there to anybody that does want to create apps and know how to control the cameras over USB. For things like Lightroom and Capture One, I would love to see support there, but if it's something that you really want to see, reach out to the respective companies and give them a little poke. See, show them that there's support in the industry for you wanting to have those kinds of things. It's about as much as I know about it. Let's see. The full frame lens display focus distance in meters on the G9 scale has no value. It cannot set the focus manually. Gotcha. Okay, now I understand, Martin. Yeah. So the GH5 Mark II, so the newest camera does also have the ability to show focal length. And I believe, where is my GH5 Mark II? And I'm sure somebody would be annoyed because I had it stored without a lens on it. I swear I normally don't do that. Battery would be good too. The other benefit of the GH5 Mark II is I can use GH5 BLF19 batteries in here, and everything will still work. So the GH5 Mark II, the distance scale on the back of the camera is in feet. Feet or meters. Yeah, right now I have mine set up for feet. So the GH5 Mark II does have that ability. I do not know if that is a processor or the engine that allows that kind of stuff. So not sure if it's something that the G9 would add to it. But yeah. Ever since I switched to an M1 Mac, I'm unable to get Lumix webcam software to work with my GH5 and S1H. Is it an M1 compatibility issue? Most likely, yes, it is an M1 compatibility issue. Camera manufacturers, in general, we usually do have some pretty quick updates in the grand scheme of things, but I do not believe that there is a... actually, I'm sure there's no M1 specific version for it. So if you're on an M1 Mac, it's relying on, what is it, the Rosetta, whatever compatibility thing that they're using for Big Sur. So the best I can suggest with the webcam is to just try reinstalling the webcam software or the drivers to see if it works. And I will make sure to point that over to my team in Japan. And actually with that, everybody, I'm going to have to actually call it today because it is 2:30 already here in Texas. So we've gone an extra half hour, but I wanted to make sure that I got to as many questions as I could. You guys were awesome with all the questions that everyone had. As a reminder, if you guys enjoyed this content, if you guys really had a good time listening to me ramble on and answer questions, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon if you know that you want to see more of these videos. It helps me out tremendously in being able to bring more content to everybody. For those that participated and actually answered the question that I posted in there in the poll, thank you so much. This helps me figure out which kind of path we want to go to. And like I said, throughout August, each week we'll be going over a different category of cameras. So we're going to be talking about S-Series, G-Series, the micro, which is the Micro Four Thirds series, the point and shoot cameras, and we'll also be talking about lenses. And who knows, we may have an interview thrown in there. I'm not 100% sure yet. Still working on some scheduling stuff. So outside of that, Thank you again, everybody. I apologize if I could not get to all of your questions, but we could really, really be here all day answering questions, and maybe that might be something that we could do. Do an extended period one on a weekend if everybody wants. Yeah, so with that, thank you, everybody. Make sure to check out next week's stream. That will be going live, posted tomorrow, so you'll be able to set reminders and all that kind of fun stuff. Again, thank you for taking the poll. And I hope everyone has a good rest of your day. And if you have questions that didn't get answered and you want me to address them later on in another stream, there's an email address that'll be on the end card for this that you can shoot us questions to after the stream. So with that, thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. And I will see you next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time right here on Lumix Live. Take care.